Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Hope you're doing well, guys. Before I get into this video, remember that my book, The Interview, if you're into Kafka, Dostoevsky, Hermann Hesse, Marcel Camus, Marcel Proust, did I say Marcel Camus? No, Albert Camus. Links down below if you're interested in supporting a fellow INFJ, okay? Psychological fiction, Jungian insights, and so on. So, in this video, I wanted to talk about something that I don't think I've talked about before, right? But it's something that has come to my attention more recently. I'd say maybe in more recent years or recent months, and it is the idea of hatred between types. Now, you might think that I chose this particular title because I was trying to get some attention, but I think that, you know, what I've seen sometimes looks a little bit to me like hatred, and it's, I think, at the end of the day, not so much the hatred of type as the idea that someone might be resentful toward a group of people, and the way in which they express their resentment or their hostility is by reducing them to a type and the particular negative trait that are perceived to be in that type, okay? And honestly, this could be something that happens more often online, on online forums, which is where I've been observing it, where you have people of two different types, and sometimes, you know, they might end up having a big argument and maybe some words would be exchanged, and among those words, you notice that there's this temptation that happens often to just say, oh, you are of that type, and oh, you guys are like this, and you know, it's to reduce the person to the type and supposedly to these essential characteristics that are negative of a particular type. So to use two examples, I will delve more deeply into the example of the hatred toward INFJs as promised in this video, but you can actually observe that from most types, and I'd say for INTPs that is something that INTJs too, but INTPs and INTJs experience that essentialization of the type characteristics, you know. So you know, at a milder level you have the ENTP and their supposed permanent state of memeing, and the INTP is supposed to be like a know-it-all, and who is always trying to stir trouble in online conversations, something like that. It's very common. But for INFJs, I think that the dislike, when it does happen, is a little bit more. It's a little bit more vicious in a way, and has more repercussions, because it's not the kind of criticism and the kind of accusation that limits the responsibility to the individual. The characteristics are the characteristics of a type as a whole, but the embodiment of those characteristics are, you know, happening at the level of the individual. A person is a troublemaker. A person is stirring conflict. You know, INTP, just for fun, INTP. Now, in the case of an INFJ, and that's where it gets a little bit more insidious maybe, is that the accusation, and it's something that's, you know, I've decided to make a video about it because it struck me that I've observed it many times. Maybe I've become a little bit more attentive to it, something just, or less oblivious, I don't know, because sometimes I'm a bit oblivious of conflicts, you know, between people and between types online. Now, the accusation is this: hive mind, group mentality, scapegoating of people that are perceived as deviating from the norm of the group, of the pack, of the mob, whatever you want to call it. Punishment, exclusion, banishment. Okay? And so the idea behind it is that INFJs tend to react emotionally to things, that they are likely to intellectualize what is essentially an emotional reaction, spread that sense of being scandalized throughout the entire group of INFJs, that will develop this kind of like, that's the whole hive mind descriptor. It's this kind of group mentality that forms and becomes unified and crushes the person who's perceived to disrespect the rules and the norms, and ultimately to just have maybe a differing opinion. So the differing opinion is, its fault is to be seen as condemnable from within this hive mind INFJ network of norms. They disagree with it, they universalize their criticism of it, their moral condemnation of it, and they punish whoever dared to, have a different opinion, express their individuality in contrast from, to the group. They make sure that they exclude them in some way. So it could be being banned from a forum. It could be bullied in a sense by the group, and being made to fall into line with what is expected of them. So this is, I think the idea behind this is this dislike of expressions of pure individuality. It is like my perception. It's not so much what has to do with a particular opinion, but it is because you could have opinions that are shared with people of the INFJ type, and they could be controversial opinions. But it's this idea that a person would not seek the approbation of the group and would hold on to their idea even if it's offensive to the group as it has come to an agreement about whether it should be offensive or not. And a lot of the time, this contrast is expressed via the distinction between FE and FI, and with FI being supposedly, very individualistic and protective of its values and caring about integrity, whereas FE being a bit more proselyte and requiring a flattening of everything around it so that nothing doesn't fit, And I have to say that, well, I understand how this stereotype and this hatred emerged. It's, I think, based on a misunderstanding of how INFJs function, because there's nowhere near as much agreement between INFJs as would be perceived by the people who find themselves in those situations or condemn what they see as a hive mind. The impression, I think, is given by the way in which INFJs express themselves, which is, via NIFE principally. And so the FE does give the sense that if there is, an exchange between INFJs about a particular topic, you'll sense that they function from the same mode of perspective. It doesn't mean that they actually agree on the thing, but it might be perceived that way by people who, find themselves excluded. What those people feel and resent, they think it has to do with them being scapegoated for having the wrong opinions. But I think that what really happens is that they resent, I think what they resent is this ability that INFJs have of being on the same wavelength when they express themselves among each other. It's like there's this wavelength, and it's very linked to NIFE, and I want to make more videos about NIFE and how it's like they reach this kind of frequency where they're speaking from the same plane. They might disagree with each other, but like they're in the same realm, and it is a kind of realm of universal values, so it's not an FI led realm. That, I think, is very alienating to people, and they interpret it, because it is so alienating, they interpret it as bullying, as making them excluded from the group, and sometimes as scapegoating. But it's not what happens, and there can be disagreement between INFJs, but often what looks to us like disagreement will look to others, or to the others that are maybe predisposed to distrust us, as a form of tacit agreement about the fundamentals. And that can lead to a lot of communicative breakdowns that eventually entrench the distrust and the hatred. But I would love to hear what you think about this, because I'm still processing the information and trying to make more sense of it. So it's completely possible that I'll be making more videos about this in the future. In the meantime, enjoy your Saturday. I'll be talking to you soon. Ciao.